Good morning, everybody. If you all wouldn't mind, start filling in these seats. We're going to get started here in a couple moments. Thank you so much.
We're going to have one last mic check for the audio in the back. This is a mic check, testing. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Hey everyone, just two quick things from me. So if we could silence our cell phones, just make sure your cell phone is on silent. Second thing, at the end of the press conference, should the governor decide to take questions, that's only from the people in the tent. Just FYI. All right, thank you so much. We'll get started here shortly.
Well, what a beautiful day to be in Apalachicola, man. What a great spot for our state. I've always enjoyed coming here. Beautiful, beautiful part of the world. And we've got a great announcement here today. As you see, we've got a little hardware behind us that we're going to unveil here in just a minute. I do want to, welcome everybody. I know we've got a lot of dignitaries from here in Franklin County. Thank you for coming to this. I'm also joined by Florida's fearless Lieutenant Governor, Jay Collins, Green Beret, great guy. Our very busy and accomplished Secretary of State, Byrd. He's got to navigate election integrity, which he does very well, and we do very good in that in Florida. We've worked very hard on it. But then he also is the kind of the chief diplomatic protocol person for Florida. He oversees stuff with arts and stuff, and we've had a lot of work there because I'm not funding with your tax dollars woke stuff, right? And so we've got to get in there and do all that. And Cord's been right there, and then now he's really the tip of the spear for America 250, and Florida's really. We're leading the country and leaning in on this because we think it's important to remind people that we're lucky to be Americans. Visit Florida President and CEO Bryan Griffin. So he's relatively new to the job, doing a great job. So we're here today, September 17th, which just happens to be Constitution Day. And 238 years ago, we had the delegates to the Federal Convention in Philadelphia sign their names to what would eventually be adopted as the United States Constitution. And that was not an easy task. We sometimes, America 250, as we look, that's celebrating July 4th, 1776, when they declared independence. It's kind of a little pesky fact of that is just declaring it didn't mean they actually achieved it. They had to fight a war. They had to win a war. They had to win a war against the foremost power in the world, and they were very much outgunned. And you had 2/3 of the population either was loyal to the British Crown or didn't care. And so you basically had 1/3 of the colonies that wanted to do the American Revolution. And so they had to fight. There was a lot going on there. You had, after the American Revolution, you had the Articles of Confederation. You had a lot of problems in a lot of these states, and there really wasn't good order. The founders at the time who had kind of steered the country through the revolution, they were worried that you'd have all this mob violence and mobocracy, and that the whole experiment would just basically collapse on the runway, so to speak. And so they figured, something needed to be done. They needed to have a framework for the country so that you could protect our God-given rights, but also provide a framework for the country to be able to grow and prosper. So that's really what led to the movement to convene in Philadelphia in 1787. And part of the reason we're here today is because we are here as part of America's 250 to honor the namesake of this county and one of the delegates to that convention in 1787, Benjamin Franklin, who, I don't know that we've ever had someone quite like Franklin in all of American history. At the time, though, since it's Constitution Day, it's important to point out this was kind of a renegade thing that was being done. I mean, they said they were going to change the Articles of Confederation. They're meeting in Philadelphia. They didn't exactly have cable news then, so they're kind of deliberating. You don't have media in there, and they're having to hammer out a lot of really important issues. There were two people at that time that were just head and shoulders above everybody else. George Washington, of course, the father of the country, was the commanding general during the American Revolution, and then Ben Franklin. And it wasn't even close. Nobody else was even close. And so the fact that Franklin was there, and he was getting up in years by the time you got to the 1787 time period, that was really, really significant. And so Constitution Day is a reminder that this is not something that is normal to have a written constitution endure for over 230 years. In fact, it's totally opposite the whole sweep of history, where these republics had been created, and then they typically collapsed. And so our founders really took those lessons to heart. They wanted to make sure that they created a foundation so that the country would be able to prosper, but they knew you could do the best constitution in the world, but it would not be something that would run on autopilot. And so when Franklin walked out of that convention, he was asked, did you give us a republic or a monarchy? And he said, a republic if you can keep it. Because they understood each generation has to do their part, exercising the duties of being a citizen in a republic, sometimes having to strap on a uniform, risk your life, and even give your life for service to this country. So they knew that what they had done was monumental, but they also knew that the whole experiment would continue to be a work in progress. And so as we reflect on Constitution Day, there were compromises. It wasn't a perfect document, but it was the best that had ever been done up to that point. We should be thankful for that, but we also know we have a lot of work to do in this country to make sure that we are restoring the original vision of what America has been supposed to be. And I know a lot of people have worked very hard. I know Florida has worked very hard on that to really show a positive light and what can be done when you have a free state, when you enforce the law and make sure that people are protected, when we make sure that we're doing things to lift people up. So I'm proud of that, and I'm proud to be here on Constitution Day. So we've had, overall with America 250, our view is to lean into it. There are jurisdictions in this country that are tearing down statutes of America's founding fathers. In Florida, we don't do that. In fact, we're putting up new statues of America's founding fathers in different parts of this state. And that is really a natural outgrowth of our emphasis on civics education since I've been governor. It just occurred to me that American civics and understanding what it means to be an American, understanding the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, that had really been a lost art. You go to a lot of universities, they don't want to be teaching about that. They want to be teaching about, some zombie studies or something ridiculous. And so we really wanted to make sure that, because it doesn't matter what you're going to do with your life, when you leave our K-12 system, and honestly the universities we want to include in this as well, and we have, some people are going to go straight into the workforce. Honestly, if you get skills, you graduate high school, there's a lot of opportunities to do that. Sometimes people go to college and they go deep into debt. Not in our state universities, because the tuition's the same as when I became governor. It's the cheapest in the country for Florida residents. We're proud of that. But others, sometimes you go deep in debt and then don't have a lot of great options. So going straight into the workforce is a really viable thing for a lot of people. Others will go to a state college, some will go to a university, some will go to professional school, all these other things. Some will go into business, some will go into this. It's a lot of different pathways, but all the people that come out of this state school system will be called upon to exercise the duties of being an American citizen. And with the rights that we have from God and are protected by the Constitution comes responsibilities. And that may just mean that you participate in elections. Maybe it means you go as a parent, you go to a school board meeting because they're not doing what they're supposed to do, and you let them have a piece of your mind. Maybe you run for political office. Maybe you join the military. Maybe you support you're in law enforcement. There's a lot of different ways that you can contribute as a citizen, but I just think it's important, and I've always believed we can't be graduating blank slates. We've got to give our students a foundation so that they understand how America came to be, what are those enduring principles that mark the founding of this country and continue to make us unique throughout the world, and how do you apply that into this modern age. There's nothing new under the sun. Our founders studied all of human history. Human nature has not changed. They didn't have TV in 1787 or internet or social media, thank God. They didn't have artificial intelligence, which that's all. Don't even get me started on that. They're like, oh, we're all just going to be under artificial intelligence. Really? It's garbage in, garbage out. And when you're querying this, if they have a bad data set, they're producing bad results. And I see a lot of flaws in that whole thing. We'll discuss that at length some other time. So they didn't have that, but they understood human nature. They understood the power of government. They understood the need to limit it and separate the branches and create checks and balances. And those insights are as true today as they were in 1776 when they declared independence, in 1787 when they signed the Constitution 238 years ago today, and it was just as true when they ratified the Bill of Rights shortly after the launching of the new republic in the early 1790s. So all of that is just how I think it's important. So these are really timeless principles. These are things that we want our students to understand and appreciate. So we've done speech and debate now. We have this debate initiative. Every school district in Florida is doing it. I think when we started, I think we had like 10 school districts that really were serious about speech and debate. Now everyone is. We host a championship in Orlando. We've been hosting that there across the nation. And, you know, first of all, when you have to get involved in speech and debate, in this day and age, I just think it's important. You need to be able to stand and articulate something in a public setting. You can't just be like, you know, doing social media the whole time, right? And burrowing into that world. We see that creates a lot of problems in society. So I think that's a benefit, even apart from civics, just that we're doing that. But also, when you talk about speech and debate, you know, you may have a certain viewpoint on that. You know, you may be like a high school student that, you know, really, you know, believes in like gun restrictions, right? Well, you may be asked, hey, you got to defend the Second Amendment. And then you've got to question your own assumptions. You've got to actually think, okay, there's a lot of people that believe in the Second Amendment. Why do they believe that? Why, you know, if a student hasn't been that, why is it? And then you have to go and you have to grapple. And then you actually see things from a different perspective. So I think it's really valuable. But we also understood, you can say, we got to learn all this stuff. It's so important. We can put money into it. And that's great. But you got to have teachers that really understand and are passionate about this subject as well. So we created a course for teachers, and not just limited to civics teachers, history teachers, English, whoever, where it's a 50-hour course. We got some of the best scholars from the country to do, so it's like a lot of it's on video, and you kind of do all this. You get a $3,000 bonus if you go through with it, which is really, really good, and I know a lot of appreciative. But you're actually learning things about, okay, you know, when they showed up in Philadelphia in 1787 to do the Constitution, what was their frame of reference? Talk about religion. You talk about Enlightenment. You talk about British common law. You talk about all these different things that influenced how the Founding Fathers thought and have influenced American constitutionalism since then. And honestly, you know, it is a lost art. You are not, that course that is offered in Florida, you're just not going to get that at universities. Now, maybe now at New College in Sarasota, Hamilton Center, University of Florida, we're working on Adam Smith Center to do more in Florida International. We've really worked hard, you know, on all this, and I think it's great, but generally speaking around this country, you can go and you're just not going to be equipped with this. It's just been a lost art. So we've been very excited to do that. I think it's important. It's something that, you know, you may not, it's not always on the front burner, right, of things, but if you take a step back and you say, you know, ultimately this experiment is going to rise and fall on we the people. And if people don't understand this or don't believe in it, then it's just a matter of time before, you know, this whole experiment collapses. But so far, we've had 21,000 teachers that have gone through this course, which is really incredible. And, you know, the satisfaction results after they go through it is like 90-some% say it was very worthwhile. So that's really, really meaningful. So now you have someone in the classroom that understands this, has a great frame of reference, and is able to inspire students to do. So we've doled out $60 million to teachers who have gone through this program. And I'm just really excited that we were able to do that. We've been doing it now for a number of years. It's been really, really good. So we've done all this on civics. And I mentioned something with the universities as well, because I do think it flows even beyond K through 12. We have something at the University of Florida called the Hamilton Center. It's only been in existence for a few years. I think it's already the premier institute for the study of Western civilization, American constitutionalism, and citizenship in a republic in the entire country. They're hiring faculty from Harvard and Princeton, not leftist faculty, but they're hiring because those universities, honestly, they've gone really, really off the rails. So you have really good scholars who that's not what they signed up for. Well, then they can come to Hamilton, they can come to the University of Florida, and all of a sudden it's like, man, yes, we believe in the classical mission of a university. We believe in preparing citizens, or preparing students to be citizens of this republic. We want them to think for themselves. We don't want ideological indoctrination. So that has been something that's absolutely amazing. It's only going to get better. And, you know, I've spoken with some really significant people across the country that are in academics, and they're like, all these people want to go to Florida now. They're like, it's like that wouldn't, I mean, even 5-6 years ago that wouldn't have been the case, right? Now, this has really been, the state of Florida is really the focal point of the study of American ideals, constitutionalism, Western civilization, the things that kind of elite academia has frowned on for so many decades because it doesn't fit their ideological agenda. Well, we're done with their ideological agenda, and we want these universities to work for you, the taxpayers. So you can't have a situation where you're voting people in like me by 20 points, and somehow these universities are Marxist compounds. That doesn't work, and that's not what we're doing in Florida. So Hamilton Center is amazing. New College in Sarasota, another good example. You know, they just got commissioned a statue on campus. They got privately funded that they're going to do to commemorate Charlie Kirk. Not a lot of universities would probably, you know, want to go that direction given their ideological orientation, but New College is really dedicated to being a classical liberal arts college. It wasn't always like that. It was very left of the left. We put a lot of people on the board. They got new leadership. They did things like, they were the first college in America to eliminate DEI. This is years ago, but they did that. They eliminated some of these esoteric studies that are more about ideological indoctrination. And so now the enrollment has really risen. The test scores are now going up. They're recruiting students from all across the country. Because, you know, as a parent, like we've got kindergarten, second, and third grade, so it's not like this is front burner for my wife and I, but we do think about, you do all this stuff as parents, you have certain values you're trying to instill, and then what? You turn them over to a university and it all just gets wiped away and they're doing the opposite? Like, a lot of parents don't want that, right? And so, I mean, you could be like me. I rebelled against it, and I became conservative as a result of the leftism because I knew it was bunk, but that's not true for everybody, right? So you just go. To be able to go to New College now, you know, hey, you're sending the kids. They're going to be really lifting up, I think, the values that a lot of people do. So that right there has been a big success. And then we've got other examples across the state of Florida. So that's something that is going to be important, not just now, not just 5 years from now, but that's for a generation. That's going to be significant. And the state of Florida is leading the way, which brings us to America 250. I think it's really important. I mean, you know, next year is America 250, but we've leaned in on it and say we're going to be doing a lot of stuff leading up to next year, and we're going to make sure that the state of Florida is really at the forefront of celebrating this. Now, Florida at the time was not a British colony and was not a part of the American Revolution. We obviously came online a little bit later than that when you had, you know, different skirmishes, things that kind of happened in that, and eventually became a territory and then became a state in the 1840s. And we are the oldest, with St. Augustine, that's the oldest settlement in all of European settlement in all of North America. You know, I see some of these guys sometimes from Massachusetts. We're at the National Guard Conference a couple of months ago, and they say, you know, we have the first muster in 16, whatever. I'm like, whoa. They were mustering in St. Augustine in the 1500s. That's just the truth. But it was not. It was Spanish control. So, but put that aside. We think it's important. We know it's important, and so we're going to do it. So we started with George Washington. There was a statue of him up in Mount Vernon, and I guess they weren't necessarily using it at the time. So Mount Vernon agreed to loan it to the state of Florida, So we put it in the state capitol in Tallahassee. So you walk in, and if you're going to go left to go to the governor's office, you see this beautiful statue of George Washington there. And we did the unveiling of that, and that's just been amazing to have that in the state capitol. I mean, the reality is Franklin is one of a kind. Washington, if it wasn't for Washington, the country would not have gotten off the ground. That's just the truth. The whole idea of a republic is no one is indispensable. You elect people, you do this. It's more about, we the people, and people can get elected, serve for a short time, whatever. And that's true. Washington's the exception that proves that rule, because without him, it wouldn't have happened. So that was so important for us to be able to remind people about that. And, his name has been put on a lot of stuff, Washington, D.C., Washington State, he's on the $1 bill, all this stuff. Sometimes people just it's like, okay, Washington, it's like almost been sterilized when people don't really appreciate, what a unique and an impactful individual he was. So we did that. That was really good. Then we did in Jefferson County, we were able to get a Thomas Jefferson statue. So you have this great statue when you're going up, I think it's the courthouse there in Monticello. You go up, and you got TJ just sitting there. He's sitting on a bench or whatnot. Really, really impressive statue. Byrd was able to get that done. We're here today. We're going to unveil in a minute Dr. Ben Franklin's statue in Franklin County, which I think is really, really amazing to be able to do. In the hopper, Alexander Hamilton in Hamilton County. We are going to have James Madison in Madison County, and we're even going to go down to the Florida Keys to airmail in a James Monroe statue in Monroe County, which is going to be really, really great. So Ben Franklin. I don't know how he did all the stuff that he did. I mean, he's inventing things. He would write books. He was a diplomat, a statesman. I don't know that we've ever had a leader in American history that had such a diversity of accomplishments and achievements as we did with Benjamin Franklin. He was somebody that did Poor Richard's Almanac, a collection of proverbs and rules to live by. He was an inventor. He's flying the kite, with lightning strikes. He's doing things on bifocals. He did a stove. He's doing all these different types of inventions. He founded the University of Pennsylvania in 1749, which is, it had been one of the top universities. I mean, recently some of these, the way they behave, it's just different. So he did that. He was very active in the cause of independence, which is significant because he was well known. He was very successful as a colonist. He did not have a bad life. He was taking a huge risk to be agitating for first the redress of grievances, but then ultimately separation from Britain. When they got to the Continental Congress, when they were working on, and Franklin was one of the ones that was working on the Declaration of Independence, he's famous for telling the folks assembled there, and by extension the colonies that they represented, we must all hang together or we surely will hang separately. So when they pledged their lives, fortune, sacred honor, they knew that if they lost, their penalty was guaranteed death. That's what would have happened. They all would have been executed for treason for having signed the Declaration of Independence and fought for American independence from the British colonies. And so he was one of the Committee of Five that drafted and presented the Declaration of Independence. He later, of course, as I mentioned, was at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787. And, that convention was not easy, because you had populous states that just wanted representation to be by population. You had smaller states that said, no, we want states represented. We were a confederation of states. It's not about just individual population. So that was almost insurmountable. That's why they created the House, which is population, and the Senate, 2 senators for each state. It's called the Great Compromise. They had to hammer out a bunch of other stuff. I mean, just having an executive, they rebelled against the king. What, you're going to create a single executive? Is that going to be someone that's going to be too powerful? So they had to debate all these different things. And it really didn't go well for most of the convention. And so at one point in the convention, Franklin stands up, and obviously he commanded respect just because of how accomplished he had been, but he was also known as more of a rationalist, more of a deist. You had a lot of religious influence during the Revolution, but Franklin was not considered one of those people. So he stands up and he says, I'm thinking to myself, how is it that we have not appealed to the Father of Lights to illuminate our understanding? And so he requested that they all engage in a prayer to be able to ask God to help them make it through the convention. And, sometimes that's pointed to that, well, Franklin may have had a reputation as a deist, but, there he is wanting to appeal to God. Others say, well, that the convention must have been in dire straits if even Franklin is saying, we need to appeal with prayer, because that was not like him. So they did it, they came together, and they eventually hammered it out. And he said towards the end, so they're signing it, so this would have been September 17th of 1787, and they're signing it, and George Washington was the president of the Constitutional Convention. He was sitting at the front, and Franklin stood up, and Washington had a chair that he sat on, and at the top of the chair there was like half of a sun. And Franklin said, I've been looking throughout the course of the convention to try to figure out the sun on the back of Washington's chair, is that a rising sun or is that a setting sun? And he's like, now I have no doubt with the adoption of this Constitution, or the proposal of the Constitution, that's a rising sun, not a setting sun. It signifies the rising of a young republic that would eventually be the envy of the world. And sure enough, it got ratified, and the rest is history. During the Revolution, though, so he was kind of back in the States then, he was out as a diplomat. In Britain, he was there for time. He was in France. He was legendary for his carousing in France. I mean, he had a lot of fun in Paris when he was doing it. I don't even want to know the details of that, but he was definitely somebody that enjoyed life. So he was doing that, but U.S. probably wouldn't have won the American Revolution if it wasn't for France coming in and helping at the end. And really, that was Franklin that really set the stage for that. So a remarkable success as a diplomat, in addition to being a domestic statesman. And he's also just somebody that you read Poor Richard's Almanac, you read a history of his quotes, they ring as true today as they did back then. I have a couple favorites of Ben, and these are things that I think if you watch how we kind of run things, you could see we take these to heart. One of the things he said is, well done is better than well said. And ultimately, that's something that I've certainly tried to live by. Words can be meaningful, but deeds are ultimately the most powerful. Don't tell me what you're going to do. Show me that you're actually going to get it done. And if everyone in elected office stood by what Franklin said, we'd have a lot more productivity around the country than we do now. The other thing that I've taken to heart, as he says, is he that is good for making excuses is seldom good for anything else. You got to kind of step up, you got to get it done, and you can't be making excuses. So we're really excited to be here. I think people need to know. I mean, my kids, we're telling them every time we do these about these different folks, and I really hope our young people are able to be inspired by the examples of America's founding fathers. I mean, I just think to myself, how would this have worked back in 1776, 1787, if instead of like a Benjamin Franklin, you had people like Adam Schiff? I mean, would it have done well? I mean, I think probably it would not have done well, right? I mean, it's just, so we were really blessed with a unique set of leaders who were able to achieve great things and give us an opportunity to live in a free society. And obviously we struggle to continue that, to make it better, to restore freedoms as those have been eroded by big government over the years, and we've done that in Florida in a number of different respects. But man, I hope these young people throughout the balance of this year and through next year really are able to learn something significant about the founding of this country. And I think it could help spark a great renaissance throughout the country if young people really appreciate these ideals. The country's always done well when we're true to these founding principles, when you're applying those faithfully, we typically do well. We get into trouble when people turn their back on those founding principles and when they're not continuing to recognize the enduring principles that the country was founded on. So I do think it's important, not just as an academic exercise. I think it's important going forward as free people. So before we're going to call up the LG, we're going to call up Byrd, we're going to call up Bryan Griffin to make some brief comments. But before we do that, Secretary Byrd and I are going to officially unveil the statue of Dr. Benjamin Franklin that will be right here in Franklin County. There he is. Good man right there. All righty. So we'll start with, so Jay Collins was a Green Beret. I think some of you may have met him already, or you know him, but if you don't, he was a Green Beret for 23 years. He's actually the first person, after serving 18 years, he lost one of his legs, and rather than retire, he became the first person in the history of the Army to re-qualify as a special operator Green Beret on a prosthetic leg, which is not easy to do. And you got to go through the same stuff that they did, everybody else does. And so he's got great experience serving our country in uniform. He's also been operator for a charity that responds to natural disasters, and they have done a lot in Florida. Knock on wood, hopefully we don't need that this hurricane season. So far in the Atlantic, I think there's something out there that's I think going to be a fish storm. So we're watching, every day that goes by in September gets us kind of one day closer, but you never know, right? These things can happen very quickly. But he's done that, remarkable. And then even more recently, we were in, when Iran and Israel had the conflict, we had a lot of Floridians that were over in Israel, students that were studying or on tours, church groups that were over there. And there was a frantic, what are we supposed to do? The airport's closed. How are we supposed to get? So we authorized rescue operations through the Florida Division of Emergency Management. We were able to get thousands of people out of Israel. We flew home, many of them, from Cyprus and other places. And so, I was happy to authorize that. But, I'm sitting at a desk signing this in Tallahassee. Jay Collins was then a state senator from Tampa. He flew over to Israel, was on the ground as the ballistic missiles were coming down, personally rescuing people from that conflict and bringing these Floridians home. So I really appreciate what he's done for service, and he's been very strong on achieving major conservative victories, whether that's Second Amendment victories, whether that's banning the Chinese Communist Party from buying land in Florida, which I signed, but he did in the state Senate. These are major, major things that have been really good for the people of Florida. So I present to you Florida's Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins.
Well, good morning. It is great to be here. I'm a bit of a history nerd. I love it, having traveled around the planet and seen some of the places that are so dissimilar from what we have right here in America. But more than anything else, aren't you glad to wake up every day and be a citizen of these United States? We are so blessed. We are absolutely blessed. With America 250 coming up, the governor hit, as always, all of the key talking points. You can hear some things again, some things that are really, truly important. But what we have to talk about is the audacity, the courage, the thoughtfulness, the leadership of our founding fathers. Look at what they built. Look at our nation that they built compared to the time. They risked everything they could be for a belief of something bigger than themselves, of freedom, of a republic, of we the people. They did that. We uphold that. When I served in the military, when the governor served in the military, and each of you who are veterans as well, we swore an oath to defend our Constitution, to protect, preserve, and defend. And that's the same oath that we swear when we serve in office. It's fitting that we're here today in Franklin County honoring Dr. Benjamin Franklin the way we are, because frankly, there is nobody who we should talk about more on this day. What he did behind the scenes to build a nation. When the spotlight wasn't on him, he was never a president, but he did so many things. Only 2 years of formal education. He signed the Declaration, he signed the alliance with France, he signed the treaty with Britain, and then he signed our Constitution. He led our nation through storms, through difficulties, and yet was resolute in the end. The governor hit on the amazing things that he said. He hit on the story, but what we want to talk about here more than anything is, what does that mean to us? What does it mean to us? We have an opportunity each and every day as citizens of this nation, living in the best state in Florida with America's governor, who has stood alone incredibly often and been right when others wanted to chastise and push back. We know that bold, focused, conservative leadership matters. We have an opportunity to stand for those things that created our government, that created this nation, our American people. You know, it's often said that America just beats to a different drum. You're doggone right we do, because we have our own ideas, our own ideals, our own principles, our values that make us uniquely American, and we are so blessed to have those. So as you go about your day, I ask you to think a little bit about Dr. Benjamin Franklin. I ask you to think a little bit about what our Constitution means, but I ask you to focus more than anything on how do we protect and preserve this just the way our forefathers did. Our founding fathers built it, they handed it to us, and we have to do the same thing for our children. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for being here today. God bless each of you, and God bless these United States.
Okay, and now, kind of navigating us through the 250. So, part of the thing, it's sad that there's other states that are like tearing down statutes or mothballing them. The flip side of that is we're embracing it, and so we can get these things on discount. We're getting them like they're not using them, so Byrd is out there, getting all these statutes, getting everything lined up, and we've got. I know I saw the James Monroe one that they're working to bring down here. We had, I think, a little complications with Alexander Hamilton, but I think that's going to be good. I think Madison's in the hopper as well. And, we're going to do all the namesakes for the counties, but we're not going to stop there. We definitely want to be able to do more in other parts of the state of Florida. And, there may be some jurisdictions that, may not embrace a founding father as much as like here in Franklin County would, but that's okay. We want to make sure that everyone's got a chance to learn about this, and it's really important. So I appreciate all the work he's done on this project as well as so many other things, ensuring, we don't even talk about in Florida these elections anymore because we have the results in like an hour, and like everyone says, why can't all the other states be like Florida? That didn't used to be the case in Florida. And so we've done a lot over the years, legislation. I've removed election officials who didn't do a good job and all this. But on the day-to-day, Secretary of State's office, they're pushing through what needs to be done to make sure that we have strong election integrity in Florida, and we do have the best in the country. So Secretary of State, Byrd, you're up.
Good morning, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, citizens of Franklin County. Happy Constitution Day. Today on National Constitution Day and Citizenship Day, we commemorate the signing of the U.S. Constitution on September 17, 1787. Benjamin Franklin, one of our most distinguished founding fathers, played a significant role in the Constitution, so it is fitting that we unveil his statue on this day. Before the Revolution, he was a renowned author, inventor, scientist, and civic leader, a brilliant thinker. The founding fathers trusted him at key moments in our history. In my office, I have a picture hanging that shows Franklin and Jefferson and Hamilton writing the Constitution, and that is a reminder every day of what those men went through and what they did to give us what we have today. Franklin helped draft the Declaration of Independence, secure a military alliance with France, and negotiate the Treaty of Paris, which ended the war with Great Britain. In all his accomplishments, Benjamin Franklin embodied the virtues of hard work, enterprise, ingenuity, virtues which have characterized America's rise as the most dynamic and innovative nation in the world. And the governor mentioned Franklin's wit and wisdom immortalized in his publication, Poor Richard's Almanac. That spirit is alive and well in Florida, where we honor the past and celebrate those who laid this foundation. In dedicating this statue, we not only recognize Benjamin Franklin's greatness, but the greatness of the nation he helped to build. As chair of the American 250 Florida Advisory Commission, I'm proud to lead our state's America 250 celebration, and this ceremony is part of that celebration. The commission is planning events in all 67 counties leading up to and throughout 2026. We're engaging as many citizens and visitors as possible to educate our children about America 250 and the events and the people that have made our country great. I'm grateful for the leadership of the governor for his unwavering commitment to preserving American history and ensuring Florida leads the way in celebrating our nation's founding principles. And Governor, I never see you as excited as when we do this because he's such a student of American history. I can tell. I mean, you just riff on it, and it's very it's inspiring. And I hope that we can all aspire to that level of knowledge of our country. I want to recognize the Department of State's Division of Historical Resources, who played an important role in acquiring the statue and working with Franklin County Coordinator Michael Marone on the logistics of bringing this important symbol to Apalachicola. And I also want to recognize Heather Riley, the Supervisor of Elections here. Oh, where's Heather? Oh, there she is, who's doing a wonderful job as doing her constitutional job in ensuring elections in Franklin County. I want to thank the Department of Transportation for their assistance in building the concrete pedestal on which the statue is mounted and transporting the statue to this location. Also want to recognize the Museum of Florida's History, Design, and Fabrication Shop for working with the county and their expertise in getting the statue involved here at the courthouse. These things weigh thousands of pounds, and it's not an easy task to get them here, so they do a wonderful job. And finally, as we prepare to celebrate America's birthday this year and next, let's take a moment to appreciate Benjamin Franklin and all the founding fathers who risked their lives for the cause of freedom. I also encourage you to stay tuned for a slate of America 250 Florida celebrations being held across the state in the coming year that will be family-friendly, patriotic, and educational events celebrating the birth of the greatest nation in the world. And I'll leave you finally with a quote from Benjamin Franklin on the Constitution. He said, "The Constitution only guarantees the American people the right to pursue happiness. You have to catch it for yourself." And in Florida, under the governor's leadership, millions of Floridians are out every day catching happiness. Thank you. Happy Constitution Day.
Just for the record, I get just as excited when we're talking about road widening projects and infrastructure grants. Yeah. If you believe that, I've got oceanfront property in Arizona I would like to sell you. So visit Florida. See, Bryan had worked in our office for a number of years, and it's an important thing to kind of parrot Florida's virtues to folks. We've got, they said like no one was going to come this year for whatever political reasons. We've had these left-wing groups have done boycotts on Florida for years now, certainly since I've been governor, and I think every time they do it, we set another tourism record. And so we're doing very good. We have that. And, it's interesting. Obviously, people go down to the theme parks, and there's a lot of activity in South Florida. There's different things that happen. But one of the best things you can do if you really want to have a good time with your family is do Old Florida. And it's honestly, it's refreshing to not have everything be commercialized and everything, a lot of family. And I will tell you, like here in Apalachicola, like they catch the fit. It's amazing what they do. Great restaurants, very, very good, but just very beautiful. And, this is kind of, as Florida was meant to be. So we have so many great spots, particularly throughout the northern part of our state, not just here in Franklin County, but throughout the region. We've worked really hard with folks here and in neighboring counties to, recover from the storms. It's not been easy. I mean, you had Idalia in 2023, which was a major hurricane. It didn't get as much attention because when it hits the Big Bend in Florida, the media doesn't care as much as if it hit, other parts. That's just how they are. But it was very, very significant. Then you did Debbie, which wasn't as significant as Idalia, but it's going the same path when people are recovering. So that was really devastating. Then you had Helene, that came in. Milton did turn and went further south on that. But, that's a pretty significant string of events, and we're hoping that we get a respite. We had 10 years from 2006 to 2016 where there were no hurricanes in Florida that hit, and then we've had 6 majors in the last 7 years, so these things kind of go in. But we've been really supportive of helping out with the response initially and then continuing to do it. And, you can count on me to do it. Hopefully we don't have to do for any new storms and we can just kind of focus on the ones that have happened. But I do know that this is a great part of the state, and I know more and more people see that. So Visit Florida President and CEO Bryan Griffin. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Governor, and good morning, everyone. I'm Bryan Griffin, President and CEO of Visit Florida, which is our state's tourism entity. Happy Constitution Day. Indeed, Florida is the #1 tourist destination in America, and we're proud of that. But we're here to honor one of America's most remarkable founding fathers. Over the last few years, we've all witnessed a craze of bad faith, politically motivated demonstrators tearing down statues and demeaning our nation's founding. It achieved nothing but to reveal how little those individuals knew about American and world history. We're a good, decent, and just country founded by a group of wise, earnest, and God-fearing individuals, and we are lucky to call America home. Therefore, we should take every opportunity to remind future generations of the value and scarcity of liberty. That's why it's so fitting that Florida is putting statues up to restore the rightful recognition of our founding fathers and to celebrate them and all they contributed to our nation's successes. Once again, Florida leads. Benjamin Franklin was, in particular, a man of many talents: a printer, a scientist, an inventor, a diplomat, and a statesman whose brilliance helped to shape the United States. At just 15, Benjamin Franklin was already publishing essays under a pseudonym, outwitting Boston's literary elite. And among his many contributions to science and industry, he charted the Gulf Stream, aiding transatlantic voyages, which is an endeavor that particularly resonates here in Florida, where our currents draw visitors from across the globe. His ingenuity gave us the lightning rod, bifocals, even swimming fins, important to Floridians, and his work as a publisher developed effective political commentary that shaped the Revolution. He was instrumental in the Continental Congress and in the Constitutional Convention. He was a pivotal American diplomat in Europe, as the governor mentioned. He was an accomplished writer, and he was a man that lived by values. When he returned from his first trip from London, he sat down and wrote down, he was in his 20s, a list of values that he wanted to live by, honesty among them. And that's just so rare and important and speaks to the Founding Fathers, speaks to him. As a signer of both the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, Franklin's courage bolstered others in the fight for our country's independence. A contemporary of Benjamin Franklin said, "He snatched lightning from the sky and scepters from the hands of tyrants." Here in Franklin County, Florida, named in his honor, this statue will be a beacon of that legacy. It invites us to reflect on America's founding and our experiment in self-governance. And as we near 250 years of independence, Florida is the perfect place to celebrate this milestone. From the streets of St. Augustine to historic Tampa, from the Panhandle to the Keys to right here in Franklin County, Florida's history and contributions to the Republic are numerous. That's why Visit Florida, partnering with the Governor's Office, the Department of State, and many other state leaders, will be working tirelessly to make Florida the destination of choice for those celebrating America's semi-quincentennial. When I took the helm at Visit Florida not long ago in August, one of my first meetings was an annual conference that gathered all of the heads of America's state tourism agencies. And I have to admit, I threw down the gauntlet with Massachusetts and Pennsylvania and some of the other traditional 13 colony states. I told them that Florida intended to give them a run for their money in hosting the biggest state celebration of America's 250 next year. We are all in. We will highlight historic sites around this state, patriotic events, and Florida's contribution to our nation. You can pick up driving tour maps and other 250th materials at Florida's Welcome Centers, and follow along and stay tuned on social, and you can go to america250fl.com where all of this will be located for your convenience. So come explore our state's rich history, reflect on our founding fathers and monuments across the state such as this one, and discover why Florida is a perfect destination to honor our nation's past and its future. Thank you, Franklin County, for hosting this historic moment. Thank you to Governor DeSantis for having the courage and commitment to rightly honor our country through monuments such as this. And thank you, Benjamin Franklin, for your contributions to our republic.
All right. Good job. And it goes without saying, but I will say it, and I know the sheriff will agree with this. You see these people across the country. They think they can go and defile a monument or tear down some statue or monument. Just understand. You pull those stunts in Florida, you are going to face serious consequences. We're not just going to sit there idly by and let you destroy public property. You also just, the reality is as we look into 250, and Franklin was obviously very prominent in Philadelphia for a lot of his life. The Continental Congress met there, signed the Declaration of Independence there. The Constitution was debated and signed there in 1787. And, you actually, if you ever get a chance to go in, I know the city's not as safe as it should be, and which is a whole nother issue. You got these district attorneys that basically let the criminals out, and they don't prosecute like you should. That's happened in Philly in a really bad way, and so it's really hurt the city because they've turned the back on public safety. And I know people say, why has this happened? Well, it's you got financing from people like Soros, you got a political machine, you got all this, but the reality is the results have been poor. So hopefully, because I went there back in the day, and it was very vibrant, but things have changed, particularly in the last 10 years. But you can go into that Constitution Hall, and you go in, and honestly, it was small. I'm thinking, these guys are all, kind of crowded in there. They were there in the summertime. They didn't have air conditioning back then. And so I was like, man, this is really something to be able to see that. But that's always been very meaningful to me, that particular building where so much of the republic was birthed there, and a city that's got that. And they got a statue of Rocky still somewhere. So for me, it's like they're singing my music there. But I do think it's an interesting thing to be able to do and see and learn from. Okay, do we have any questions?
Talk about the importance for you to be able to unveil these statues for America's 250.
Well, I'm just passionate about the idea that we were really lucky to have such a great constellation of leaders found this country. They were very smart. They had studied history. They understood human nature. They understood that they were swimming against the tide of human history by trying to establish a Republican form of government. But they were willing to risk their lives, fortunes, and sacred honors. They were willing to work hard and scrape and compromise to be able to create a constitution, years after the Revolution. And, Franklin, when he got up, there was a question, was he going to support the Constitution when he was there? And he said, I consent to this Constitution because we can do no better, and I'm not certain that it's not the best that can be done under the circumstances. And so it really was a unique moment for individual freedom and human liberty. And, that was just the opening salvo. They knew a lot more needed to be done. Franklin, because a lot of the founders get criticized on the other side, but I think it's important to point out, he was the founder or one of the leaders of the Pennsylvania Abolition Society. That was something he believed in, very deeply, and was pursuing that all the way until his death. So I just think it's important for us to appreciate what we were able to inherit as Americans, to give thanks to those who did risk their lives, fortune, sacred honor, in order to establish this republic. And I just think it's important that people know that, appreciate it, understand the ideals that they fought for, understand the principles that are reflected in these founding documents, understand the colorful nature of some of these guys like Benjamin Franklin, and the stoicism of a George Washington, the intellect of a Jefferson or a Madison. It's really, really important. And so I'm just thankful that we're inheriting that legacy.
New college statue for Charlie Kirk. Is the state planning on doing anything for Charlie Kirk?
Well, so obviously that's a state university, New College. So the question is, New College, they already got donors to commission a statue of Charlie Kirk for New College, and basically to symbolize the importance of open debate, particularly on college campuses. And, it's interesting. I remember when he was 18, because this is 2012. I was running for the U.S. Congress. I had never run before. but you get on these circuits, right? You go to certain conventions, or you go this, or you're down in certain parts of Florida. You know, you have to raise funds. You got to do all this stuff. So we kind of crossed paths, and it was very earnest. You could tell like he really knew his stuff. But you don't know what's going to come of these things. And then like a couple years later, I'd see him, and like he'd be at these big events and doing all this, and really grew that organization in a really significant way. And the reason why that I always had respect for it is because bringing conservative principles to college campuses, that's basically like the lion's den for political debate, right? Because the campuses have gone so far in one direction. I think that's changing a little bit throughout the country. Definitely has changed in Florida, no question. But he's doing that, and he's bringing these ideas there. He's jousting with all these, all these students and professors, quite frankly, who are very left. But he always did it, I think, in good faith and really believed in the importance of debate. And so the assassination was obviously a tragic thing and a very sad thing, because you got a 31-year-old father of two. But it was even more tragic because what was he doing when they killed him? He was debating students, making the argument, showing how, you rely on logic and reason and facts to win these things. And so the attack on him was more than just an attack on one person. It really strikes to the heart of whether this whole thing we have can be viable or not. And if you can't express your views and engage in good debate, and it's not just, this was an extreme situation where somebody went and assassinated him, but there are other speakers that go where the mob will shut it down and they can't. There's others that get shouted down and they can't talk. There's all the people get canceled all the time from even being able to speak. And so this assassin was